There is a certain kind of coworker who does not just do their job poorly, they make it nearly impossible for you to do yours. They interrupt you in meetings, take credit for your ideas, plant doubts about your abilities, and the most frustrating part is that every time you try to address it, you are the one who ends up looking like the problem. People have probably told you to ignore them, to focus on your work, to be the mature one. But while you are trying to stay composed, that person is actively undermining your reputation, your progress, and your peace of mind. And that sense of powerlessness is exhausting. Let us start with what people usually tell you to do. Ignore them, stay professional, focus on your work, keep your head down, and let your results speak for themselves. The problem is that none of that works. In fact, it makes things worse. Because while you are trying to be the mature one, they are constantly shaping your manager's perception behind the scenes, reframing every project you touch. They present your wins as their ideas. They plant doubts about your judgment, your work ethic, and your place on the team. And the more invisible you try to become, the more space you give them to define who you are. The second thing people tell you is to confront them directly. Have an honest conversation, clear the air, tell them how their behavior makes you feel, and ask whether you did something to upset them. And yes, sometimes that works. But most of the time, the moment you show them they are getting to you, you give them exactly what they wanted. Proof that their tactics are working. And now, they know exactly where to push harder. So if ignoring them does not work and confronting them is risky, what do you actually do? First, you need to understand what you are dealing with. Competitive coworkers who want you to fail usually operate from one of two places. Either you are a real threat to something they want, or they have identified you as someone they can use as leverage. Let me explain the difference, because your strategy depends on which one you are dealing with. The first type sees you as a threat. Maybe you were promoted faster than they were. Maybe you are working on the high-visibility projects they have been chasing for years. Maybe your manager clearly prefers your approach. Maybe you are younger, and they see you as competition for the next opening. When that happens, you did nothing wrong. You are simply in their way. Before you showed up, they may have been the standout performer, the go-to person, the one everyone noticed. Then you arrived, and the spotlight shifted. And instead of improving their own performance, they chose the easier path, which is trying to pull you down. This is how you recognize that situation. Their behavior is consistent. They undermine you in meetings, take credit for your work, copy your manager on your small mistakes, but never on your wins. They are friendly to your face, but you later learn they have been speaking about you behind your back. They give you impossible deadlines or assign projects designed to fail. This is not random negativity, it is deliberate. They are trying to dim your light so theirs appears brighter by comparison. And the most dangerous part is that they rarely do it in a way that looks like open aggression. They do it with a collaborative tone, with innocent-sounding questions, with comments that appear concerned about your way of working, your communication, or your ability to prioritize. They are not trying to destroy you directly. They are shaping a version of you that will be easier to dismiss when an important decision comes up. And if you do not see that narrative forming early, you can spend months defending isolated incidents without realizing that your overall reputation is what is actually at risk. The second type is different. They do not see you as a threat. They see you as an opportunity. This person has noticed something about how you operate, how you respond under pressure, how you handle conflict, and they have decided that you are someone they can take advantage of. Maybe you are too accommodating. Maybe you apologize too often. Maybe you have shown that you back down when challenged. Maybe you are new and still figuring out how things work. They are not intimidated by you. They simply see a chance to elevate themselves by making you look worse. Now here is what most people do not understand about both types. They are not going to stop on their own. They are not going to suddenly develop integrity. They are not going to lose interest and move on unless targeting you becomes more trouble than it is worth, because what they are doing is working. If it were not working, they would not keep doing it. So your job is to change that equation. You need to make it more costly or more difficult to go after you than it is worth. And that cost is not always created through confrontation. Many times, it comes from becoming difficult to misrepresent. The clearer it is in writing what you did, what you proposed, and what was decided, the harder it becomes for them to rewrite what happened. Your goal is not to win a private argument with that person. Your goal is to prevent their version of events from becoming the accepted version. Here is how you do that. First, document everything. Every meeting where they took credit for your work, every email where they distorted what you said, every conversation where they committed to something and later claimed they delivered it. You are building a record, but you do it quietly. You do not escalate every incident. You are collecting evidence so that when it matters, you have proof. Because without documentation, it becomes your word against theirs. And if they have been doing this longer than you, they are more experienced at it. Second, control the narrative. After every important meeting, send a summary email to confirm what was discussed. List the action items and who is responsible for each one. Include the relevant people. You are not being aggressive, you are being precise. What you are really doing is creating a version of events that is difficult to alter later. When you complete a project, send an update that clearly states your contributions. This is not about self-promotion, it is about clarity, and that clarity makes it much harder for someone else to claim your work. Third, build alliances. Do not go around criticizing this person. That will only make you look unprofessional. Instead, build strong, genuine relationships with others in your team and across the organization. Make your work visible beyond your direct manager. Contribute in meetings. Support your colleagues. Become known as someone who is reliable and capable. Because if this person tries to damage your reputation later, there will already be people who know your work and can see the gap between reality and whatever story is being told. Fourth, and this is critical, remain completely professional with them at all times. Do not lose your composure. Do not send emotional messages. Do not react impulsively in meetings, because that is exactly what they are trying to provoke. They want you to appear irrational, emotional, difficult. The moment you give them that, they gain the advantage. So stay calm, stay respectful, stay focused. It frustrates them when they cannot get a reaction, and it protects you. Because if the situation escalates, you want to be the person who handled everything professionally. Now, if none of that stops the behavior, if it continues or escalates into harassment or sabotage that affects your ability to do your job, then you involve human resources. But you go prepared, not emotional, not venting. You go with documentation. You describe specific incidents with dates. You explain what you have already done to address it. You remain calm and factual, and you ask for guidance on next steps. You are not demanding punishment. You are asking for support in handling a difficult situation. That distinction matters. It positions you as reasonable and focused on solutions. And if after all of that you realize that your manager minimizes it, human resources quietly contains it, and the pattern continues, there is an uncomfortable truth you need to face. You are no longer just dealing with a difficult coworker. You are dealing with an environment that has decided that behavior is acceptable because it is useful or tolerable. At that point, your strategy cannot be only about defending yourself within the system. It also has to include protecting your reputation, your energy, and your ability to leave if necessary. The first step is to stop carrying what the system should be forced to handle. That starts with understanding how the system actually works, not the version you were told, but the one that is truly operating. And once you see that clearly, your actions begin to change. You stop quietly compensating for problems that others use as an excuse not to act. You stop confusing professionalism with constant overcompensation. You start documenting impact, naming costs, and making visible how much of the team performance depends on an extra burden that should never have been yours. Because as long as the problem keeps reaching the surface already resolved, the organization will keep pretending it never really existed. It was never that nobody knew who the problem was. It was that the cost of continuing to live with it had already been assigned to you. If what you just heard put into words something you have been experiencing but could not explain, like this video, that signal helps this message reach more people navigating the corporate world without understanding the real rules. And if you do not want to keep stepping into professional environments without knowing what is actually at stake, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because that is exactly what we do here.